Good morning, everyone. Or afternoon, forgive me. Good afternoon, everyone. Boy, it's such a great afternoon to see so many people here supporting this day. My name is Philip Hassler, and I have the privilege of serving as the McKinney ISD School Board President. And I'm here to welcome you all. Thank you again so much for coming. This is an exciting, proud day for McKinney ISD, and your presence here is deeply appreciated because you and I are joining together for this momentous occasion. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some very special guests that are here with us today. So first of all, we all know this is Frazier Elementary, so we want to take the time and honor those family members whose names this school represents. So if you're a part of the Frazier family, we'd love to have you stand to honor you. Thank you so much for being here. I remember when we broke ground on this property and you hear the wonderful stories and the legacy and the heritage that your family has had in this actual community right here. So thank you for being here, Representative. I know on behalf of the board, I greatly appreciate it. All right, I'd also like to recognize our board members that serve with me on the board. First, I'd like to represent Larry Jaggers, who's here today. Larry, if you'd stand. And then also Stephanie Odell, board member, and Lynn Sperry as well. Very good, thank you. I really appreciate these guys' service. Sometimes serving on the board can be an exciting and unique thing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to serve with these folks. I'd like to also take this time now to recognize our McKinney ISD cabinet members. And those are individuals who serve in leadership in the McKinney ISD school system. So first I want to recognize Representative, he is representative, but let's call his real title, Superintendent Sean Pratt. After that, Dr. Melinda De La Felice, Deputy Superintendent. Assistant Superintendent Dr. Amber Eberson. Assistant Superintendent Melanie Raleigh. Assistant Superintendent Shelley Spalding. Hey, Shelley. And Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dennis Womack. And then I know someone that y'all know well here on this campus specifically. We want to honor right now Frazier Principal Amy Holderman. Amy? All right. And Amy, I want to let you know that this morning I chose my blue suit with a green tie, so I would be here to support the Fraziers, all right? All right. Now at this time, I also want to recognize some special guests as well. I also specifically this time want Frederick Frazier, our state representative, and his family to stand as well. So if you'd stand so we can honor you. Thank you for being here. And also, we love the relationship that we have with the city of McKinney and the partnership both with the school district and the city. And we have the honor of having Paul Grimes, our city manager here. Paul, if you'd stand. Thank you again for being here on behalf of the city. Today, we are here for the dedication of our 21st elementary school, Ruth and Harold Frazier Elementary School. Dedicating the school is more than a ceremony, it's a commitment. By dedicating this school, we affirm our dedication to education, growth, and the future. The walls, the classrooms, and the facilities are not just bricks and mortar, they are the foundation of dreams and aspiration. It is with great pride and excitement that we dedicate Frazier Elementary today. The future is bright in McKinney ISD. At this time, I'm really excited about doing this. I get to introduce the Frazier Elementary Choir, who will sing the Frazier School Song and recite the school cheer. Take it away, guys.
Thank you. We are the Frazier Gators, hear our cry. We salute the green and blue. We sing with heartfelt song and loyalty. To our school we'll all be true. With kindness, love, and Frazier Gator pride, we learn here side by side. It's great to be a Gator through and through in our Frazier family. It's great to be a Gator. It's great to be a Gator. It's great to be a Gator. It's great to be a Gator.
Great job. Good afternoon and welcome to Ruth and Harold Frazier Elementary School, home of the Gators. My name is Amy Holderman, and I am the proud principal of McKinney ISD's newest and largest elementary school, serving 711 students, 75 staff members, and close to 1,500 parents and guardians. I stand before you today with great joy and pride as we gather to inaugurate a new chapter in our elementary school's history. This ceremony marks the beginning of an exciting journey for the Frazier family, as well as our entire Frazier School community and McKinney ISD. I am truly honored to be part of this monumental celebration. Our school is not just a building, it's a place where dreams are nurtured, friendships are formed, and knowledge is acquired. It's a place where seeds of curiosity are sown and roots of character and values are firmly grounded. Today, as we inaugurate our school, we are not only opening our school doors for Frazier's inaugural year, but opening the doors of possibilities and opportunities for each and every Gator who walks through our doors not only today, but tomorrow and in the future. Our school is a place where we learn not only from textbooks, but also from each other. It's a place where diversity is celebrated, where different talents are cherished, and where every Gator is very unique and very special. Each of you, our students, staff, and parents, bring something extraordinary to our new school family, and we can't wait to see what we will achieve together at the best new school in McKinney. I want to take a moment to thank the Frazier family, their former students, as well as Frazier's dedicated students, staff, and parents for their unwavering support in making Frazier Elementary what it is today. Without your commitment to excellence and unwavering guidance, we would not be here to celebrate this exciting moment. As we begin this new journey, I encourage every Gator to embrace learning, to be curious, and to never be afraid to ask questions. I encourage you to support and be kind to one another, to make friends, and to create wonderful memories. Our school is a place where we will learn, grow, and make a difference both in our own lives and the world around us. In conclusion, together we will create a vibrant and nurturing school family environment where everyone will flourish. Thank you, and let's embark on this exciting journey with the enthusiasm and optimism as we strive to honor and celebrate the many contributions of Ruth and Harold Frazier. We are McKinney ISD, and it's always a great day to be a Gator. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Ruth and Harold Frazier's daughter, Lynette Diley, to the podium. Come on up.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks to everybody for being here today for what's a very special day for our family and for this community. When my great-grandfather, Charles Moore, walked from Tennessee to Texas in 1857 and bought this land, his immediate plan was to establish a family farm and then encourage the rest of his family to come from Tennessee to Texas and settle near him. He did go back to Tennessee to marry and then persuaded his parents to join him later in Texas. He was a lifelong learner. He taught himself Latin and Greek, and he kept a daily journal for 50 years describing the farm's daily life and his time in the community. That involvement with the land and that love of learning continued to the next generation through his only daughter and my grandmother, Lynette Moore, and her husband, Claude White, and then to their daughter, our mother, Ruth White Frazier, and her husband, Harold. From early childhood, my parents stressed to the three of us the importance of education, and by example, the need to be active participants in the community and in their church life. Others can describe to you today what an experience in their classroom was like, but I can tell you as their child what values they demonstrated to us. The importance of kindness to others, the willingness to work hard to achieve their goals, their continual desire to learn. My mother studied and received her master's when she was in her 50s, Dad many years earlier, and Dad was receiving National Science Fellowship summer scholarships even towards the end of his active classroom teaching time. The need to provide leadership in the community, either through youth organizations like Boy Scouts or the Campfire Girls or the local Heritage Society or teaching Sunday school. The desire to learn more about other cultures and history through travel, which they dearly loved. Their willingness to open their home for social gatherings that built friendship and connections that linger even today. My parents were modest people, and they would never dream that their heritage of being faithful stewards of the land, committed and dedicated educators, and active participants in the community would result in having a school named for them. But they would be thrilled. In fact, my father's buttons would have been bursting, and my mother would have been a little embarrassed, but they would have been thrilled. What would have been particularly pleasing to them was that the effort behind the school naming was a grassroots effort led by a former pupil, Carolyn Carbon, who will be speaking later today, and joined by numerous other students and teachers. My brother Claude, who's here today, and I, and from her perch in heaven, my sister Betty Ruth, would join me in thanking each of you for this wonderful honor for our parents, Ruth and Harold Frazier. Thank you.
So 157 years and 14 days ago, this was written. Decidedly bad day. I felt sorry to break loose my pleasant satisfaction of the last 15 months, and it was a bitter thing to tear my folks loose from all their associations of the last 37 years. But my main objective and desire for the last 17 years has been to get my folks all in the same place, and I hope to succeed. It leaves in no doubt in my mind that that is my duty. 4 years ago today, I started to Texas to hunt a home, leaving all my folks behind. Today I am starting to a home in Texas, taking all my folks with me. Charles B. Moore, October 8th, 1866. This is how Ruth and Harold started their day. At the breakfast, we would read what happened 100 years ago today from the journals. And we would also read a Bible verse, and they actually made it through the Bible one whole time and were on their second. So this picture shows you actually what C.B. Moore would have gazed at over the edge there. It's at the top of the hill. And one of the things my grandmother inherited the legacy of not only being a steward of the land, but also to creating the community and the legacy of continuing C.B. Moore's effort of bringing everybody together. My grandmother was a lifelong learner, and traveling was not just a bucket list for her, but it was learning and finding out about the history that she studied and bringing that back to her students. And as far as her being a teacher, The only thing I have about that is back when I was in high school and junior high, I'd go, so what about my grandmother, Mrs. Frazier? And people would kind of look at me, smile, act nice, and I'm like, oh man, she was a hard teacher, wasn't she? So she looked at everybody in terms of what they can do, knew their potential, and helped them achieve that with the background that she was giving them. So, and looking back at this picture, this is my grandparents walking out the driveway from their house, and there's a cattle guard right there. And Ruth and Harold were always together and helping each other out, and we're a solid partnership. And that's my grandfather reaching for my grandmother so that they could go across the cattle guard together. And what they're doing is they're actually walking down, and kind of where you can see where the old lane was, where the fire station is now, is the point that they would usually walk to. So in that too, they're gazing almost directly to where the school is right now. So it's a very special picture and kind of nice. So from their partnership, I think it's very fitting for the school to honor them both because they were a solid partnership. People would come up to me and say, oh, I saw your grandparents today coming out of Luby's, and they're just so cute because they would help each other and they respected each other their entire marriage. So, and I think going back to C.B. Moore's original, coming to Texas to bring his family and build a community, I think it's very fitting that you all are now helping to continue that legacy and building a wonderful Frazier community. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. As ironic as it may seem, I never would have imagined 59 years from the time I met Mr. Frazier I would be here today. But Scripture tells us God knows the plans He has for each and every one of us. And it is in times like it is right now that I'm here to give recognition and acknowledgement to Mr. and Mrs. Frazier. Although I didn't know Mrs. Frazier, I did know Mr. Frazier. My wife and I, when we came to McKinney High in the desegregation period of Jim Crow, Mr. Frazier was my biology teacher. And I guess he saw a little apprehension in me when I first entered his classroom, being the only person of African descent to be in the class. He made the entire class know immediately. As diversity was mentioned a few minutes ago, he specifically stated in the class, he said, we are a class of one, and everyone in here will work together, everyone in here will be friends together, everyone in here will respect each other. And that brought a lot of comfort to me during the time I had Mr. Frazier as my biology teacher. And that also enlightened the spirit within our class and throughout the entire school during our tenure at McKinney High School. And I just wanted to just say to the family, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell how Mr. Frazier was. I also heard how Mrs. Frazier was from another from another student whose parent happened to be an educator too. And Mr. Maurice Marvin told me how Mrs. Ruth Frazier was in elementary school, and he said, there was never a dull day in Mrs. Frazier's class, he said, and she was one of unique character, which make us go to think about how McKinney is today and what we say unique by nature. And I think that they showed to the school districts, back during that time there was only 4, North Ward, South Ward, East Ward, and West Ward. And today we have over 20 elementary schools. So that just shows to me the uniqueness that was embodied in those 2 individuals as to how the school district and the education system has matriculated today. And I just wanted to just give my appreciation to being a student of Mr. Frazier's and to thank you for the opportunity to just come and share with you for the few minutes that I've had. Thank you.
Well, I'm Carolyn Corbin, and I was a student of Mr. Frazier. In fact, the first year that he came back to teaching in 1962, I was a student. I was a sophomore, and so I was a student in his biology class. And we'd heard, you know, back in in McKinney High School at the time, we didn't have very many new teachers, so you kind of wondered, what's that new teacher going to be like? But immediately, upon meeting him, I knew that I really could make a good friend of this individual because he was such a nice guy and he had such great expectations of the students, and he had such a background here in this area, if you will. You know, we're very close to where Mr. and Mrs. Frazier met and married. This area was Chambersville when I was growing up. And it still probably has some markers of Chambersville today. We have the Chambersville United Methodist Church. We have the Chambersville Cemetery. And there was also a Chambersville schoolhouse. And at the time, Mrs. Frazier came to teach. There was a principal there named Harold Frazier. And so they met, fell in love, and married in 1934. That's almost 90 years ago. And so it's amazing how when things start, they come around, and here we are in just across a few fields of that dynamic farming community at the time. Here we are dedicating a school, and they probably never would have thought of it because, as I understand, it was probably a 1 or 2 or 3 room schoolhouse, very small. And but it was still a school, as I understand, until about 1961. But the Fraziers then went into the McKinney School, she teaching at L.A. Scott. We called them junior high school in that day. And then his teaching, at first he taught agriculture, and then he taught biology, and then advanced biology. And when I think of the Fraziers, I really think of them in 3 different ways. I first of all think of them as educators 360, and that means they're all the way around. They understood teaching, and that was the exposition of their skills. And that was the interaction with the students in the classroom. But they were much more than that. In fact, thinking back, a long time back, probably over 100 years back from President Theodore Roosevelt, he said that people actually don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the Fraziers knew that. And so to get across what they knew, because they were excellent instructors and excellent trainers and excellent teachers. You know, like I say, they had advanced degrees in their subject matter. They were very, very smart. And they went to college during the Great Depression. In fact, Mr. Frazier was in the 5th graduating class from Texas Tech. That was a long time ago. And Mrs. Frazier went to Washington University in St. Louis. They were very well educated, came back. She went to what is now the University of North Texas, as Lynette mentioned, for her graduate degree, and then he went to Texas A&M for his graduate degree. So they were very well educated. People left their classes and could pass a test to go on anywhere they wanted to go. And as we were getting together letters and support for this effort of the naming, I got to read. In fact, the whole proposal came out to be 30. I think it was 83 pages long. We had so much feedback from everybody. And they were telling stories about the Fraziers and what they did for them. How if they needed to make a float, to build a float, they just said, come on out to the farm. Mrs. Frazier would have cookies, cocoa, and cold drinks, and whatever else. And Mr. Frazier would clean out the barn and make a space so that they could have it. And I remember as a little girl, 6 years old, we were Bluebirds Campfire and Horizon Club. We would go out to the Frazier farm and have campouts. The whole town was welcome. In fact, there was one occasion, as I understand it, President Lyndon Johnson, when he was president, well, before he was president of the United States, he was in the Senate. And in those days, they weren't as formal as we are today, and they really didn't have as much security as today. So he came booming to McKinney in his helicopter and had some people flying him here. Landed in McKinney and couldn't find anybody. And so he said, well, where is everybody? I've come to campaign, and I need people. And so they said, well, go out to the Frazier place. That's where the people are today. They're having a big deal out at the Frazier farm. So he got in the helicopter, told the people, told his handlers, if you will, to take him out to the Frazier farm. The Secret Service got out, and then, well, Mrs. Frazier looked out the kitchen window, saw a helicopter landing, and that wasn't an everyday occasion. And so then, she thought, oh my goodness, she didn't know what was happening. So then they came and told her that they had a senator out there, and the senator wanted to make a speech and ask him, and then, of course, knowing her, she went out and told him that would be fine. Was he hungry? They were having food and so forth, and she just became promptly, spontaneously the hostess, which would have been and was a future president of the United States. And so she could do things like that. Everybody was welcome there, whether you were invited or not. And so as we go on through that, we realize that they were this 360 person. It was just much more. 25 years after I had Mr. Frazier as a teacher, the phone rang one day and he called to see how things were going. 25 years later, he wanted to know, and I'd seen him a lot between. I don't mean he waited whole 25 years. But he wanted to know how things were going and how things were going in my career. But they kept up with the people. So they were that 360-degree educator that understood that you have to be the whole person. In fact, my Angelo said that you have to understand that people will forget what you said, most probably. Now I'm paraphrasing. They're going to forget, most probably, what you did. But they're never going to forget how they made you feel. And those letters that came in to me as we were preparing this proposal for this naming, all the people told me how they felt after having been in the classroom or having gone somewhere on a field trip or going with an allied youth conference. So they may have gone to St. Louis, but by the way, the Fraziers just arranged a trip to Washington, D.C., because some people, frankly, had never been out of town, and they needed to see the nation's capital. So they were telling all those experiences that they had. So they were 360, all the way around teachers. And another thing they were community influencers. Now, they were community influencers before social media let us know and think about influencers, but they definitely were. They were influencing in McKinney. We probably wouldn't have Chestnut Square today if it weren't for Mrs. Frazier. She was part of the Heritage Guild, and one of the projects was historic preservation, and here we have it. We have Chestnut Square today because of that. We have a lot of work with the Texas Farm Bureau with Mr. Frazier. We have a lot of the things that the Rotary Club did in McKinney because of Mr. Frazier, and many things in the women's clubs that people did because of Mrs. Frazier. So they were not just teachers in a school and go home, or they weren't just dealing with their own students, but they encompassed and embraced the whole community. And after that, then, they were in their church, as Lynette mentioned, and she taught girls, he taught boys. And in one of the letters that people were writing me, they said that after they got older, then they all wanted to date. So they had parties and let them bring their dates. And then the parties went on and on. They kept going. So then they brought their fiancés, then they brought their wives. And so it was just amazing. Then they brought their children. So they stayed in touch with people all that time, all that long, to become part of people's lives. So they were community influencers all the way across the board. Again, a part of that 360 educator. An educator 360 is much more than a teacher for a few hours. And that's what they were. And then finally, they were your BFFs. And they were BFFs way before social media. They were our best friends forever. Like I say, we got that phone call 25 years after I was in his class, wanting to talk about careers and so forth. But when one would go to their house, even when we were in school, they would want to talk to us about our future. They would teach us to dream. They would talk about, dare dream. What is it that you would really like to do? And then inform you that if you had the ability to get an education and to work hard, you could get out there and you could become anything you wanted to be. And that was so true. They led the people to believe in themselves. So they taught us to believe in ourselves, to follow our dreams, to follow our bliss, and to understand that everybody is one in God's creation. Another note that came to me told about Mr. Frazier, because also he hired people in the summer, a lot of his students, of after-school work, just whenever they wanted to, they could help on the farm. And he said that he noticed that Mr. Frazier, when an animal would pass away for one reason or another, he said, I would stand back, but I would let him go to the animal and dig the grave. And before he dug the grave and buried the animal, he always had a moment of silence. He regarded positively all of God's creation. So as we look back at the 360 degrees of education and the educator that they both were, we look at the community influence that they had, and then we look at the BFFs. We understand that they left lasting footprints on the hearts and on the souls of thousands of people. And those footprints will remain, especially with this school name and the value systems that will be sent forward for henceforth and forevermore, that there will be decades to come of this particular value system that the Fraziers taught us so effectively. And knowing the spirit and the enthusiasm of the Fraziers, because again, I've known them since I was just barely old enough to walk, because again, Bluebird's Campfire, even before I knew their kids, I knew them because they let us come to the farm. I know what they would do if they could be here today, and I know what they would probably want me to say if they were here today. They would stand up here and they would say it themselves if they could. They would look very enthusiastically at the students here and the parents, and their last two words would be, "Go Gators." All right.
Good afternoon. Before I give closing remarks, we missed one special guest. City Councilman Charlie Phillips slipped in here without us seeing. Will you please stand and let us give you a hand? Today we come together and mark a new chapter in McKinney ISD in the history of our district by dedicating Frazier Elementary. This dedication is a promise to our students, our community, and to our future. Let it be a symbol of our unwavering commitment to education, to the growth of our youth, and to serving every student every day in McKinney ISD. We are grateful to the Frazier family. What an inspiring story of dedication from Ruth and Harold to education in our community. So we're grateful for you, and thank you all for coming today. Thank you to everyone who made Frazier Elementary possible, and to all that continue to support our vision of our school district and Frazier Elementary. We couldn't be more proud. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruth and Harold Frazier Elementary is officially dedicated. Thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to tour the school and see all that it has to offer our students. Thank you very much again for being here, and you are dismissed. Thank you.